Hello folks. Today we're looking at how to set up a course grader report. So taking our assessment items and making sure that our grading strategy works the way we want it to in Moodle's grader report. For this particular demonstration, I've already gone through and set up some assessment tasks with some weightings attached to them. So we've got 4 forums, but altogether these 4 forums need to be worth 10% of the course overall grade. We also have an essay assignment, which is worth 30% of the overall course grade, a literature review assignment, which is worth 40% of the overall course grade, and a final quiz, which is worth 20% of the overall course grade. Mixed in with these is a practice quiz, a frequently asked questions forum, and a glossary. Those last 3 activities are all accessible activities, but we don't want them counting to the final grade for the course. So we've got some complexity happening here that we need our grader report to be able to process properly so that we get an accurate overall course grade. With my assessment pieces in place, I'm going to my administration block because I'm in a Moodle 2.5 site. Earlier versions of Moodle, you'll be looking for the settings block. I'm going to the grades link. And this is what my grader report looks like at the moment. And this has had some settings turned on at site-wide level. Most grader reports will have this drop-down menu visible by default. Not everyone will have the tabs visible by default. They'll take you to the same places, they're just different ways of navigating. I've also got a fixed left-hand column or a static student column, and I can scroll along the bottom here to see each of my different assessment pieces. To sort out this grader report, I need to go to my categories and items area. I can do this by clicking on the tab or by going to the full view link in the drop-down report. The reason I want to go to full view is because it shows me all the options to work with as I go through my grader report, which makes my life a little bit easier. Instead of having to go into settings pages for every single thing, I can see them at a glance and change them on this page. The only thing to be mindful of when you're doing that is to scroll down the bottom and make sure you save your changes as you make them. There's nothing worse than getting halfway through this process and losing changes and forgetting where you were up to. Also at the bottom of this page, we've got 3 buttons: Add Category, Add Grade Item, and Add Outcome Item. It's beyond the scope of this exercise to look at the Add Grade Item and Add Outcome Item, but it's well worth having a look at the Moodle Docs area if you want to pursue those ones a little bit further. Right now, we need to add a category. Now, I mentioned initially that we've got 4 forums, but all combined they need to be able to add up to 10% of the overall course mark. A little more detail about that is that each of those forums are equally weighted, so none is more important than the other. We can put them into one category altogether and weight the category at 10%, which is what we're going to do. We're going to create a category name of Forum Activities. And our aggregation method is going to be weighted mean of grades. And I've just clicked Show More to be able to see this on this site. As with most things in Moodle, if you can't see the settings you're expecting, do make sure you've clicked Show More so that every setting on the page is visible. I'm also making this category a maximum grade of 100, just to make my scaling a little bit easier in a moment. For now, I'm going to save my changes. And if I scroll down, I've now got my Forum Activities category created here. The next thing I want to do is add a category for my practice tasks or my non-accessible items. So now I've given this category a name, I'm clicking open the category total area, and under grade type, I'm selecting None. This is going to be for my non-accessible items, so I don't want the grade contributing to the overall grade for the course. Clicking on Save Changes. Scrolling down. The last thing I want to do here is add one more category. It's actually going to become a subcategory. So again, clicking the Add Category button, this category is going to be called Excluded Items. And it's going to sit within my non-accessible items category. Under Category Total again, I'm going to have a value of none. Under Show More, in the Grade category section, you'll notice there's a checkbox for Aggregate including subcategories. It's deselected by default. It wouldn't matter with this category, but my parent category for this, the non-accessible items category, is set to not aggregate including this one. So whatever is in this category won't be included in the total for the parent category. We need to put it in the non-accessible items category and save changes. This may seem like double handling, but the thing is we need our overall course category that appears here, A Course About the Grader Report Setup, to aggregate including the subcategories so that it includes the grades from the forums category we just created. With that ticked, it will then go looking for the grades from the non-accessible items category as well, which is why we need to double basket that one. Coming back here, you'll notice the default aggregation for the course as a whole is simple weighted mean of grades. That's not an effective weighted mean for what we want to achieve in this course. What we want is for each of these items to be weighted exactly the percentage that we set. With simple weighted mean of grades, that weighting's already been calculated by a back-end method in Moodle. For more on that, you can look at the documentation. The aggregation method we need is weighted mean of grades. With that turned on, we can then go through and individually weight each item within our course, including categories. Our next step is to move these discussion forums and practice tasks into their correct categories. Scrolling horizontally across, I can select each of these items, but this is actually easier to do in the simple view with the Grader report because it's a condensed view. So I'm going to switch views for a moment, just by clicking on Simple View at the top. Again, if you're using the drop-down menu, you can choose Simple View from that drop-down menu under Categories and Items. From here, I'm selecting my 4 forums and then scrolling to the bottom of the page to move selected items to the Forum Activities category. And next step is to move my practice tasks into the Excluded Items category. You'll notice as soon as I select the category from that drop-down menu, the move is done automatically. At this point, I'm going to save my changes. That way I've at least got my structure saved. The next thing I want to do is my weightings and moving things around in here so that they make a little more sense to me. Because at the moment, I've got my first lot of assessments sitting underneath the rest of them because I've just moved them into that Forum Activities category. So I'm going to click on the crosshairs icon against the category and move it to the top of my Grader report. This will make it easier for me to find those Assessment 1 pieces in my simple Grader report view later on. Each of the forums is going to be worth 100% within that category, but the category as a whole is going to be worth 10%, so I'm weighting it at 0.10 of the overall course grade. My Assessment 2 essay question was weighted at 40%. My Assessment 3 literature review was weighted at 30%, and my Assessment 4 quiz was weighted at 20%. So you can see it's quite easy to go through and type out the weightings that you need against each of the items within your Grader report. If I'd wanted to avoid the category for forum activities, I could have made them individually worth 2.5%. But for me, it's just as easy to group them all together and have my Grader report do the aggregation for me. Again, I need to make sure I save changes before I move off this page. Going back to my grader report view, I can do this from either the View tab or from drop-down menu, View Grader Report. You'll notice I've now got my Forum Activities category right up the front. I can minimise it or collapse it so that I can see my other assessment pieces a little more readily. And this is another really good use of categories in a grader report. I can do the same with my non-assessable items so that I can see the category total for my course as a whole a little bit more easily. By turning editing on in my grader report, I can also choose how I'm going to display the grade from these items back to my students. By clicking on Show More under Grade Display Type, I'm choosing Letter Percentage and saving my changes. I want my students to see both that they've got a high distinction and their percentage mark, but you'll notice in that grade display type there are quite a few different options there. It's up to you to choose the one that works best for your purposes in grading with your students. To see some of these changes in action in our grader report, I've enrolled a student in the course and they've done some of the assessment pieces, but not all of them yet. You'll notice on the discussion forums, out of the first 3, they've got 100%, but they haven't done anything on the 4th one yet. The category total is still showing that they've got 100% on all the forums. Now, this is optional. You can choose to show a more progressive total if you'd prefer by changing the settings on the category itself. So I'm going to Categories and Items, and against the Forum Activities category, I'm going to edit the settings. At the moment, by showing more in the grade category area, I can see that only non-empty grades are being included in the aggregation. So my student is seeing their current total based on just the things that they've finished, not including the things they haven't done yet. If I deselect this and save my changes, then when I go to view my grader report, I'll see that the category total for the forums is 75% because they've done 3 out of 4 pieces of the work with a 100% mark on those 3. It's your choice how that mark is reflected back to your students, but it's worth noting what impact that has and what message you want to send to your students. I can make that change in the grader report as a whole by, on the grader report viewing tab, turning editing on, clicking the yellow pencil immediately underneath the name of my course category, and then in the grade category section, clicking on Show More and deselecting Aggregate Only Non-Empty Grades. I don't want to change the grades of my student here accidentally, so now that I've made that change, I'm turning editing off. Scrolling across, in my assessment 2, you can see that the student has got 100% there, but they can also see they've got a high distinction. The progressive total for the course then is 67.5%. They've got 2.5% they can pick up from the last forum activity, 20% has already been picked up from the quiz, so the last 40% can be picked up from the assessment literature. Sorry, the last 30% can be picked up from the Assessment 3 literature review. The excluded items aren't being counted at all, and that is how you set up your grader report when you want to do weighted items. If you've got any questions about this, the best place to look is Moodle Docs for this page, but the grader report information is quite in-depth, particularly the information around the aggregation methods. You really need to know what it is that you're trying to achieve before you come into this area.